So hi everybody, I'm Arsalan. I'm a mechanical engineer from Kashmir and I'm currently in San Francisco. I'm building LiveDocs. LiveDocs is a modern day office suite. With LiveDocs, teams can save time and money by automating the repetitive and mundane task of updating documents. So let's dive straight into it and show you what it looks like. What you're seeing here, besides the rich collaborative editor, is a completely programmable document. This here is an example of a daily business report that updates itself with data from tools like Salesforce, Stripe, Amplitude, QuickBooks. It also integrates with on-prem software and your own internal API, of course. You can then set up triggers and actions to manipulate this document. You can do everything from configuring simple alerts and approvals all the way to automating complex multi-stage processes. And when your document needs
a crazy mock that you made in Figma, right? This is real software. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, just clarifying. Move on.
When your document needs data from other sources and services, LiveDocs lets you sign into those services and makes all your data points, tables, and visualizations available to you and your team to use in your documents. Use LiveDocs, for example, to automatically update the weekly or daily sales report with information entered by a sales team in Salesforce, and then build a quick automation to update the weekly sales report and send it out at every Monday at 9 a.m. Boom, problem solved. And the reason we're excited about this is that companies all the way from Fortune 500s to two-person startups run on documents. Yet nobody really likes driving ownership of the documents. And we can see why, because that usually involves pasting in numbers, putting in screenshots, and dealing with subsequent typos, and the please fix thanks, and navigating the entire maze of permissions and account passwords to do so. Sales teams, for example, spend only 34% of their time actually doing sales. Product spec, as any product manager will tell you, is an endless nightmare of nagging stakeholders to update the spec, adding customer feedback wherever relevant, only to have that out-of-date screenshot still staring at you. And this is just the tip of the iceberg. There's hundreds, if not thousands, of types of documents that can be automated. The reality of the situation is that modern workflows have evolved way beyond this, and most teams' data is already online, siloed across dozens of tools. And with LiveDocs, our goal is to save millions of hours of productivity lost every year to manually updating document and sluggish document workflows. So if you want to take LiveDocs for a spin or to provide feedback, head over to livedocs.com.
First of all, Shaun, I hope you were listening, because I'm going to ask you, what do you think LiveDocs is?
I mean, I think LiveDocs is a programmable, document editor, collaborative document editor. Somewhere between Google Sheets and Notion, but more programmable, better API integrations. I mean, that's like my quick distillation, but I have a bunch more to say. How'd I do? What do you think?
Yeah, I think you did 13 out of 10. Would ask you again. So, but Arsalan's really the real judge. He'll email you his score later. What are some interesting questions you have for Arsalan about the business? How would you think about go-to-market? What do you feel like you've learned by looking at other companies?
I mean,
go ahead.
It's a really great idea, and I mean, I'm impressed. I thought that was a Figma mock until Daniel asked the question, so that was a smart preemption. Look, like very candidly, I co-founded a company, and the CEO sends out once a week a updated Google Sheet with like all of our sales data, and there's like a team of 4 or 5 people that input engineering updates and all these different updates. And the Google Doc is there's like 50 weeks in the year. And by the end of the year, you have a hard time loading the document. And anyways, it's not the right way to solve this problem.
Document anarchy, as a term you've coined internally.
I very much think there is a need for improved documents.
I mean, isn't it interesting? Shaun, just a quick question. How often do you get kind of investor updates that include screenshots in them?
Every day. I think the challenge you have here is one of distribution, where like in the case of Expanse, because
Expanse is the company you co-founded. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah. So in the case of we use Google Suites, like products, for Gmail in particular. And so then you basically get Google Docs as an add-on for free. Yeah. And it's hard to convince people to pay extra money, like to jump over when you have something that's good enough, even though it's super frustrating. It's hard to convince them to pay for something new. Notion seems to be doing pretty well with that. But just my biggest question is distribution. Like, what is the motivation? Like, what is the ROI to convince people to, pay for something extra beyond Google Sheets?
So that's a great question. So let's break it down into two parts. I think the first one is the way we're approaching it is that our goal in the short term, medium term, long term is to basically seamlessly fit into your workflow as opposed to come in and ask you to replace your entire workflow tools. And we are working with allowing you to import and export documents, not only from Google Docs, Microsoft Office, whatever, but also allowing you to have the actual LiveDocs documents live inside your Google Drive so you can do permissions management and all that way. So the way we're really thinking about it is an evolution, a gradual evolution, as opposed to like coming and replace your entire workflow. So integrating with these tools that companies already use has been the key priority from day one. The heading on the page has always been to go from reality to model as opposed to model to reality, and really capture these real world interactions that people have with software and figure out a way to figure out what their end goal is and find a better means to that end. That might be by making it a plugin that lives inside of Google Docs even, but and eventually switching them over to the LiveDocs main editor, which is kind of in parallel with something that Grammarly did, where you can install a plugin that works with your existing workflow, but to access the full suite of powerful tools and emotional context behind text and whatnot, you have to switch over to that. That's the way we're thinking about it.
I'm kind of curious to ask, so obviously we have this interesting problem talking about distribution in the enterprise. There's basically two ways to play the game. Obviously, one is reduce friction, and Arsalan's flagging here, extensions, whatever. The other is to increase value, and maybe that's what kind of Notion does over time. The trick is, of course, in products where the value is kind of CAGR, it grows over time. You have to educate someone on how to use it. So kind of familiar topic. Now, I'm curious, Shaun, when you guys were starting Expanse, I mean, as I understand it, many of the customers are huge companies, huge enterprises, governments, whatever. How did you guys do early sales? Obviously, later on, the flywheel compounds. People know what Expanse is, but how did you do it in the early days? How did you get your first big contract or two?
Great question. So it was 3 steps. The first step is we essentially got paid to be consultants to do more or less like product development for other people to solve their problems. Second step, once after we'd done that for a while, is we literally started selling PDF reports. We had built this tool that can figure out what companies' networks are, and we would sell PDFs for $50,000 a piece. That would kind of be your moment in time cybersecurity presence.
That's great.
And then the third level is like building the full enterprise deployment that can kind of plug directly into Splunk or whatever like security platform is running your business. And for that third level, I mean, it was doing full enterprise sales like that is incredibly hard. I do not recommend top-down sales on my worst enemy. Bottoms up is a much easier way to go. But in that case, it's building a relationship with someone over the course of a year. Something that I think is really underrated is just doing lots of favors for people. Like in that year-long process of while you're building trust, if you think of something of how you can be helpful to them, just offer it for free. And I think that's oftentimes what it takes to get to these full enterprise deployments. But so anyways, for us, it was those 3 things. And the intermediate one was trying to provide moment in time value, like one-off value, and charge what people would be willing to pay for it. And Daniel, these are the biggest companies in the world. And so they'd be willing to pay a lot for the moment in time value. But for you, Arsalan, I think there's opportunity to have bottoms up adoption, and that's much better.
Yes, we are approaching it from a bottom up perspective. But thank you so much.
Going bottoms up, guys. That's right.